Hello ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to our 7th C++ tutorial. In this tutorial, I want to explain some important C++ elements. Before any C++ program can work, it needs to have a basic structure, and the structure goes like this. Include iostream using namespace std int main return 0. We've already talked about this structure before, and we said before you start writing any code in C++, you need to include this header file called the iostream. We said the iostream stands for the standard input and output stream, and it is a header file that contains definitions of several C++ objects. Also, you need to include using namespace std. Std is an abbreviation for standard, and it is a namespace whose members are used in all C++ programs. The members of the std namespace are the cout, cin, endl, and all those objects we've been using. It is important to know that the iostream is a main header file that contains all those objects, and this using namespace is activating those objects to be used in a C++ program. Over here, we also have our int main, which is the main function in every C++ program. Every C++ program must contain a function called main. It serves as the entry point for the program. The translator will start executing the code from the beginning of the main function, and so it is important to include the main in every C++ code. Over here, we have the return 0, and like we already explained in a previous tutorial, the return 0 is returning an integer to the main function. And whenever this integer 0 is returned to the main function, it tells the main function that every code was executed successfully, because every code must be in the body of the main function before the return 0. And so if the compiler successfully reaches return 0, then it tells the main function that every code in the middle was executed successfully. Let's continue by talking about the use of the semicolon. Why do we use semicolons in our C++ codes? For example, let me declare a variable here with a data type double and call the variable amount. Let's initialize amount to 2.99. Alright, over here I have included a semicolon, and this semicolon is an important command in C++. Without this semicolon, the compiler will not be able to run this program, and there's going to be an error. Let's try it. Let's see out our amount. Let me save this project as elements.cpp. Now let's run it and see what happens. Run. So over here I see 2.99, and that is the exact amount we put in the variable called amount. Now let's go ahead and remove the semicolon and run it again and see. When you run this without the semicolon, you can see here that we have an error, and it said it expected comma or semicolon before cout, and so there's an error before the cout because the semicolon was not brought there. Let me bring the semicolon and try it again. Let's clear our screen and run, and now there's no problem. So what is the importance of the semicolon? The semicolon is required at the end of every statement to indicate to the compiler that it has reached the end of that line of code. So after every statement, there has to be semicolon. Over here I have the semicolon again, and it is important. Remember, the semicolon should always appear. The only exception is something like this int main. When you open a curly bracket and you break your line down, everything you put in this body is within this main function, and so it is not really the end of a line of code, because what we have here is the main body. How about this iostream? This iostream is an include and does not require the semicolon. As a matter of fact, if you go ahead and place a semicolon there and you run your code, it will still work without a problem. But you can exclude a semicolon from includes. Also, another exception will be when you have an if statement. So you said if amount is equal to 5, open curly brackets, cout, the amount is amount. Over here we don't need a semicolon because it is just the beginning of a block. The main body is what we have here, and so the semicolon has to be here. So take note that at the end of every statement, you will include the semicolon. Without it, your code will not compile and you'll have errors.